RA 11479 is called the Anti-Terrorist Law of 2020. There's a lot of noise about this all over the internet. You go to Twitter, you go to Facebook, and even on Instagram. It is everywhere. I have a lot of time in my hands. I took some time off from my nap times and decided to research on it today. I went on Twitter and all the social medias where the hashtag is used. It's so easy. You click on that hashtag and you get to see what it's about. I found a copy of the law online. I decided to print it, read through it a couple of times, but I can't seem to understand everything that's on it because I'm just not well versed with the law. So I decided to call a lawyer friend and ask her questions to get some facts. Here's how it went.
Hey Kim, good morning. Thanks for joining me today in Electric Talks.
Thanks for having me, EJ.
All right, so let's get into it. Popular opinion right now on Twitter, on Facebook, is the hashtag Junk Terror Bill now. And is it really what they think it is? Are they right to think that this is a martial law in disguise?
I think, of course, Filipinos have the right to question any law. That's your constitutional right to petition the government for grievances. As far as stealth martial law, I think that martial law is martial law. I think that there would be an actual declaration of martial law if that's what the government was trying to do. I don't really see the correlation between the anti-terrorism law and martial law. When martial law was declared in Mindanao, it seemed to be a consequence of what happened from that terrorist attack. So maybe when it comes to now an anti-terrorism law, if the government can be more preventive, then that will keep situations like that from happening. So you hopefully wouldn't need to declare martial law in the first place, because it is more of an extreme tool of the government to use when it comes to protecting the people. It's not really a general rule that can be used. It's more of an exception or an extraordinary tool to use at times when it's necessary, like times of war, times of rebellion.
Do you think that there is anything in there that would impede or would pose a risk into human rights?
I think that the policy itself states that human rights shall be absolute and protected at all times. I think where the problems may arise is enforcement and implementation. So that's really what it comes down to. I think if it's properly enforced, it's okay. But if it's going to be prone to abuse, then it's a problem. So it's going to come down to the implementing rules and regulations, I think, which are still set to be issued, because laws can't be enforced without implementing rules and regulations. So the policy of the law is that human rights shall be absolute and protected at all times. It does have some safeguards in the law, if you read it, which are nice, such as one of the sections, it states all the rights of someone accused as a terrorist, like you have the right to remain silent, you have the right to counsel, and if you don't have counsel, a lawyer will be provided for you. It also states when it comes to like any illegal evidence obtained against you, it's not admissible, so it can't be used against you in court. Also states that any law enforcement officer or military personnel who violates your rights can be prosecuted and go to prison for up to 10 years. So there are some safeguards in there, I would say, enough that I feel that if anyone who has a proper understanding of the legal system and how the laws work, coupled with the knowledge of all the rights that are provided for you under the bill, I think those together are empowering enough to be able to protect yourself. A lot of the laws are vague. Legal language can be hard to understand. I think any law is prone to abuse, if we're being honest. It all comes down to, again, enforcement and implementation and the people who are acting on it. the people who are behind these systems who are implementing and enforcing it. There are different ways to challenge the law. The first would be what's termed a facial challenge, where you can challenge the constitutionality of the law on its face, as in if what it's saying is unconstitutional, that's called a facial challenge. Mm-hmm. Another way to do it would be in application. So basically laws at a standstill, like if there's nothing being enforced, you can't really question it because nothing is going on, right? Until there's action taken, like, oh, someone is arrested and accused of being a terrorist. Then if in the implementation of the law, this person's rights are being violated because of what the law says or how it's being interpreted, then I guess that's when you can go into questioning the application of the law and whether it's constitutional or not. I see it as separate issues. I see terrorism itself as a huge threat in the Philippines. It's been around for decades and it doesn't seem like anything has ever been done about it. I think that what's more concerning to me is that no one is talking about terrorism itself, because there have been countless of lives that have been lost. People have suffered, innocent people, women, children, indigenous people have suffered from terrorism, especially in Mindanao. And no one seems to be talking about that. And just last year, the Philippines was number 9 in the Global Terrorism Index, which measures the amount of terrorist activity and how it affects a country. No one is talking about that. And I just think that's a serious problem too. And I think that, you can't just lump all issues together at once and think that they're the same thing. I think that they're different. And terrorism itself is considered by practically every country in the world as one of the most heinous crimes against humanity. It's one of the worst things that you can do. And for me, what's more alarming is that no one seems to be addressing that.
Does it pose any threat to our right of freedom of speech?
Absolutely not. Section 4E itself states that activism and advocacy are not considered terrorism. So on its face, no. When it comes to implementation and enforcement, then of course that's something that we can't say now. We can't predict the future. But on its face, no. If any law enforcement agent, military personnel going to abuse this law, they definitely should answer for it. It's all about I think that it's all about accountability. If that were to happen, then that should happen. What the law provides is a system for how they can be prosecuted. So it just comes down to how it's going to be implemented. And I would hope that anyone who would abuse this law would be prosecuted.
All right. Thank you very much, Kim, for your time. To the listeners, I hope they get something from what we talked about today. Thank you for joining us today in Electric Talks.
Thank you for having me, EJ. Always a pleasure.
And there you have it. I hope that this video was instrumental for you to find information on the questions that you may have on the face of this law. And whatever opinion you decide for yourself, it is just as valid as anybody else's opinion out there. Remember, always participate in healthy discourse and never underestimate learning from the other side. Have a great day. If you like that video, please subscribe. And if you want to join the conversation, put it down in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you and tell us what you want us to talk about in the next episode.